Well, welcome and good evening to this new Directors of Religious Education webinar hosted by the Mid-America region. I am Nancy Combs Morgan. I'm a congregational life consultant in the Mid-America region, serving with lots of different aspects to my portfolio, but I've been in faith development now as a religious professional for almost 17 years and have a real passion for it. And I'd also like our co-presenter to introduce herself.
Hi, my name is Lynn Hunt, and I'm the religious educator at First Unitarian Church in St. Louis. And I have been in that position I'm starting my 14th year there. I am also currently one of the good officers for this Laredo chapter, and I am currently working on the Continental Laredo Endowment Committee as well.
Welcome, Lynn. Thank you so much for taking part this evening. Let us set aside this time by lighting a virtual chalice. Let us open our hearts to the sharing and learning that we can encounter with one another. We light the flame of knowledge, may understanding be with us. We light the flame of love, may caring be among us. We light the flame of holiness, may the unifying spirit be within us. So you heard a little bit from Lynn and I of who we are, and we would love for other folks to share your name, your congregation's name, your role in the congregation, because some of the folks who take this new DRE webinar are volunteers. Not everybody is a professional religious educator, but of course your service is very important. So your role and job in your congregation, and then just to give us a sense of your congregation size or fellowship size and the approximate RE enrollment. So James, let's start with you, if you would introduce yourself.
Sure, my name is James Coulter, and our congregation is the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Northfield, Minnesota. Just south of the Twin Cities, and I am a quarter-time paid director of religious education. I've been on the job probably for 2 months, so I'm very new. And our congregation is about 63 or so people, and the approximate RE enrollment is it's very small. It's anywhere between, the actual kids who show up could be anywhere from 1 to 10, so it varies widely.
So glad you're taking part, James. And because we are a large region, we have 13 states, give us a sense what Northfield UU Fellowship is near.
It is near Carleton College. It is near St. Olaf College. It is northeast of Rochester, the Mayo Clinic, and just south of Minneapolis and St. Paul.
Super good. Thank you so much for taking part tonight. This is exactly why we design these webinars for folks who've only been on the job for a couple of months. So welcome.
Thank you.
I'm going to mute you, James.
Okay. I'm back on.
Sorry. Yeah. And Juliana, would you introduce yourself?
Certainly. I'm Juliana Newman. I'm with the UU Fellowship of Door County in Wisconsin. Door County is on, if you take your left hand and put the fingers together and stick out the thumb, we're on the thumb of Wisconsin, between Green Bay and Lake Michigan. We have, let's see, my role. Currently, I'm the vice president. I have been the treasurer here for 8 years prior to that. But my most relevant experience was as a member of First Unitarian in Chicago, where I had many roles in starting with work on the RE Council there. I chaired the council for a time. I have been president of that congregation, as well as treasurer. I'm not a new DRE, but I am trying to help the person that we have selected to fill that role. Our congregation size is about 100. We are mostly retirees, and we have, very similar to what James reported, we have up to a dozen children, but many of them not attending regularly. I would say we have more like 6 that are regular.
Thanks, Juliana.
And yeah.
Go ahead.
No, that's fine.
Great. And I think 1 or 2 folks from your congregation may have also taken part in the prior webinar. What's the name?
They did. The new person is Anna Knapp.
Yes, yes.
And our administrator also took the webinar so that she would have an idea of what was being presented.
That's wonderful. You all are getting well prepared. And Lynn and I will try to, at least I will try to tailor our thinking and responses towards you both, because we want to make sure this is directly helpful. A big piece of this is thinking about the professional developments piece. So some of it may not apply, some of it may. So let's move forward. I'm going to go ahead and mute you, Juliana. So in looking at the roles of religious educator, whether you're serving a congregation that is only has maybe 5 to 10 children or 200 children, I think that the roles still apply regardless of size. We find ourselves often as supervisors. Perhaps there is a child care coordinator that we work with, or someone who is an RE assistant, or there might be other folks in the congregation that you are called to supervise. A colleague, if there are other religious professionals, or if there's other staff members, or perhaps there is an active board member, as Juliana, you are definitely, hopefully, a positive and welcoming colleague. And cheerleader, I think it's important to understand that a part of serving is actually believing in the optimistic possibilities that you can encounter, even though sometimes on a Sunday or at a board meeting or during the week you can feel overwhelmed with all of the details, and perhaps you're not feeling particularly enthusiastic that day. But remember, when we are with our congregation, it's so important that they look to us for a sense of inspiration and a sense of positivism. That doesn't mean we have to be Pollyannas, but I think it's important to believe in the possibilities of your program and your congregation's religious education experience. Arbiter, sometimes you are in the role where you have to help understand, and we'll be talking about roles and relationships a little bit further. You may be in your portfolio asked to serve on a council, not necessarily an RE committee or an RE council, and you might be talking to other standing committees or task forces in the congregation. So it's important to realize that you're also a linkage person. You're a liaison. You're hopefully advocating for the greater good and the greater whole, in addition to the health and the breadth of your religious education program. You may or may not be required to be a teacher in the program. Some of our smaller congregations do require that the director of religious education spend some time teaching, but that certainly is an aspect. As I mentioned, I've been a UU religious education professional for 17 years, and no matter what I'm doing, like tonight, I consider myself a teacher throughout. It is a big part of my understanding of my ministry in religious education. And creator, and hopefully there is, and we'll be talking about the creative aspect to this work. If you just feel that you're there to be an administrator, if that's what your congregation is asking you to do, or as a congregational leader, think about that with your new religious educator. Make sure that you are giving them time to daydream, to think creatively, to think outside the box, to infuse your program with, again, the sort of creative possibilities that there can be. Important to discover your own working style. Now, Lynn and I have worked together. Lynn may or may not attest to this. She's on mute at the moment. But I am very much of an enthusiast. I'm very much of an extrovert. I think out loud. It took me a long time as a director of religious education. I served in Lexington, Kentucky, just under 7 years as a director of religious education. And I was such an enthusiast, I thought we could get to every RE committee meeting. Why bother with an agenda? We'll just talk through everything. It really did take me a while to realize that my spontaneous style was not serving the health of that committee or the health of the program. So I needed to do that work to understand what it was about me. And so it's important to share that with others, or if you are someone in the congregation working with a director, religious educator, important to name. I observe that you are someone that needs a deadline. I mean, saying that lovingly, or I encourage them to share about what their own working style is. But it's important to be mindful and to have awareness of your working style and look for complementary, not folks who work just like you, but especially in a RE committee context, look for folks who can sort of balance you out. Who sort of think internally, who perhaps need a little bit more organization. I should make I statements when I say that. And so that really covers the next point about discovering your strengths and weaknesses. The more that you invite folks into partnership with your endeavor, and especially if from a congregational point of view, as a congregational leader, the more that you can advocate for partnerships with that new DRE and look at the promise and possibility of that, that will really serve you well. And you may have already encountered this, James. I realize you're on mute, and I'm sure Lynn, who is a veteran religious educator, realizes all of these different responsibilities. We're often called to be administrators of our program, to look at the programmatic changes, how the program is structured. Are we looking at different sort of age cohorts? Are we working in a multi-age context? Just looking programmatically over the years, making sure that perhaps there's a multi-year plan. So we're actually looking at the programming quite a bit. Budget, really important if you're a new religious educator, and not to be naive, but to actually advocate for clarity of budget. Where does the buck stop with budget? Who do you answer to? Who do you submit your receipts to? How much is your religious education budget? Do keep that in mind. Worship. I always hope that every religious educator and congregational leaders working with religious educators are encouraging of religious educators to be a part of the worship experience. It's important that you're not seen as a separate leader or as someone who is just over there off in the RE wing or off in the RE room, that you're actually able to take part in maybe a portion of worship, maybe to take part in some of the multi-age worships. Worship is a central component. Looking at the responsibilities, it just seems to sort of, the list grows and grows. Of course, there are special programs and holidays, volunteer management and training. That's something you need to truly be mindful and attend to. I'm hoping that you realize that whoever you are recruiting, you are directly responsible. Maybe they are not a paid staff person, but you are managing and being responsible as a supervisor in essence, even though it may not be that term. But you need to be mindful of who you're recruiting and how they're interacting with their RE teaching team, or how they're interacting with their class, doing background screenings, all of that. And of course, it really helps to do some sort of training early in the year to review the materials that'll be used. Of course, your responsibility is to work with other advocates in the congregation. Forgive me if you hear my dogs barking in the background, that you're there to work with the RE committee as well, and to hopefully lift up communication. I'm going to put myself on mute for a moment while my dogs are barking. And I am back, and my dogs have stopped barking. The essentials, and Lynn, if you ever want to chime in, either unmute or raise a flag, because your feedback is essential because you're so wise. The essentials of building good relationships. You know, you may have been hired, or you might have been in the position of hiring your new religious educator, and I'm sure there was something describing what was being expected of them, but a job description and a posting to hire someone is quite different than the actual list of expectations. So I think it's important early on. It's not unreasonable to ask for things to be written down, and if there isn't something written down, make that an early process. Request that to be a clear process, that there's a review of your contract, job description, how you will be evaluated. Hear my words. Please invite evaluation. Evaluation is a healthy and important process. Also making sure that you have a clarity of if there's going to be an evaluation of the program separate to the work that you're doing. Just explore how that method is. Sometimes it doesn't happen until the year end. Sometimes there's a congregational meeting in the spring where everybody writes up a report, and all of a sudden you find out that someone else is evaluating your program, and perhaps it's on something you weren't anticipating, like the number of folks attending as opposed to how you were reaching out and touching souls and doing engaging work. So just think about that. And that goes to that clarity and who does what task. And I mentioned the piece about the finances, making sure that you have a clear understanding. And if you're someone in a congregational leadership position or on a board, keep that lens very clear, that there is advocacy needed for the health and breadth of the program financially, and also clarity, transparency. I always worry about religious educators who are told by their treasurers, oh, don't worry about it. We know it all. I've got it under control. There really needs to be important feedback on that. I worked with one religious educator who wept at the end of the year because she had spent 3 times over the budget that she was supposed to spend on supplies simply because she didn't know. So that's why I include that here early in the slides. Also, it's important in building good relationships, as I mentioned earlier, in standing committees of the church and supporting if you should have a minister and other leaders. And I'm going to stop there and see if there's any comments or questions. You can certainly unmute yourself. You just put your icon on your own microphone if you have any comments or questions. We will move forward then. The working relationship with parents, historically, 20 years ago, it was assumed that only parents would be recruited to help in RE programs. And I'm certainly praying that we are beyond that time, because it should not just be parents who are expected to serve in that capacity in our congregations or fellowships. But working with parents is essential, and actually encouraging parents to form their own learning circles or their own support circles, their own network. A lot of our fellowships and congregations also have cooperative preschools that are either managed by the congregation or fellowship, or there is a daycare there or something like that. Sometimes that's how people find out about your congregation. So if those parents are coming in, if those families are coming in, there's great ways to sort of link them, but you don't have to do all that linking for them, but you do have to be very intentional of being open and receptive to an open dialogue with your parents. If your parents are exploring their own faith development as parents, there's a great resource called Parents as Religious Educators. And Juliana, thank you. You've got a question. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just late in responding to your earlier invitation, and wanted to say that the comments about clarity about job description and everything are very important. We got a late start with this. We found that we had some extra money. We discovered this in August and decided to create a position, and we're still feeling our way. So it's going to be we're kind of developing this as we go. So I realize it would be better to have everything nailed down, but we don't. So
it's an organic process. Sometimes I always worry about that descriptions are created with a person in mind. You certainly, hopefully, will create control documents or contracts or job descriptions that are thinking in the long term. What serves the health of your congregation in terms of religious education, not just about that particular person. So I really appreciate your comments. Thank you so much. So in terms of also being mindful and attentive to those parents who have children living with special needs, and actually sometimes parents have adult children who live with them who have special needs, or not just talking about small children. I think that that's one of the most important ministries that we provide in our fellowships and congregations, to make sure that we are responsive, welcoming, hospitable, and radically inclusive. And if you want to know more about this, on the Mid-America site, there is a creative inclusion webinar that's happening in November, facilitated by Lynette Lowe, the DRE from First Unitarian in Louisville, and she has a background of working with folks with special needs and special education background, and it'll be worth attending. And for religious education professionals like James and Lynn and others, and also with Anna, we will be offering an online series, a course, an actual course of working with our congregants with special needs. But I think it's important to not put our heads in the sand, to be responsive and open, and not feel like you have to figure it out yourself. You know, not everybody has a portfolio that has a background of working, for instance, with a youth in the Asperger spectrum or something like that. But it's something I think we need to be mindful of. Juliana, do you have another question, Juliana?
No, I didn't. I didn't do that again. No.
Not to worry. I just want to make sure.
I didn't put up the flag. I guess I didn't. I failed to lower my flag. Is that? There we go.
There you go. I'm going to use it again.
Okay, sorry.
Not to worry. Confidentiality, and this, and I don't know your situation, James, or Anna's situation, if they are members, but it's important to realize if you have been a member and you become a religious educator, that you are actually not, and there's some great language about this, and I'll be showing you the Laredo website link that describes that sort of finely tuned balance of going from being a member to actually serving a congregation in a religious education context. And confidentiality, perhaps someone comes to you and shares something that really does require a pastoral care, that requires attention, that requires that you have a team of people that you can go to. If you should not have religious professionals that you're serving with, I first would encourage you to go to a minister, but if you don't, you know, you might become aware of some really serious issues within the families that you're serving. Just be mindful of confidentiality, and there are lots of fine-tuning aspects of this, and if you have questions about that, but just be aware that once you become a religious educator, that the way that you used to talk with the other congregants and such is quite distinct and different. And if anybody has comments or questions about that, we could pause there for a moment. Okay, I'll just give you a moment there. Okay, we're going to also move on to welcoming new families. I think this is incredibly important. I remember a few years back seeing a statistic that, you know, 1 in 5 families would actually return. So you've got 5 families coming perhaps in 1 month and only 1 family returns. Well, what's that about? Perhaps they felt that they really had to find the program, they had to find the religious educator, they truly didn't understand the separation. A lot of people grow up in traditions where children and youth stay in, you know, the entire worship service. So there's a lot of different aspects to welcoming new families. I would strongly suggest that you recruit, no matter the size of your congregation, no matter the number of kids, now of course depending on your physical layout, I would encourage you to partner with someone else to actually be at the greeter table who welcomes those new families. I would also encourage you to have some sort of material, something printed, describing what that new experience could be like. Welcome. If you're a family visiting, we ask, you know, folks to stay in, whatever it is, for the first 15 minutes of the service, and then your children or youth are sung out. Think about if it's for older age youth, of maybe even having a youth standby greeter who could host and partner them to, you know, get them to the youth meeting or youth group or the youth RE class. So think about that. It really is so hospitable if people are ready to welcome families. So in terms of the nurture of religious educators, I think it's really a justice issue that we fairly compensate. So for a congregational leader thinking about this, I think it's important to be mindful that if you have a job description that is voluminous, but you've only been hired, or you're only hiring someone for a quarter time, then to look closely at that long job description and say, what are we actually over expecting here? So to be fairly compensated also means not to have unreasonable expectations of responsibilities as well. Also time off, and this comes up quite often, especially when religious educators are working in smaller congregations, that somehow because it is a quarter-time position or it is a the congregation's expecting you to teach. I think it's not unreasonable to actually expect one Sunday off per month. Anyone, especially working 20 hours and above, I always strongly encourage the congregation to be mindful that having one Sunday off a month is critically important, and I'm sure that even if they are less than 20 hours a week, that they are doing lots of other activities through the week. But that's a part of self-care, and that's a part of taking care of oneself, and it's also the reality of our lives. Religious educators have lives too, so I'm hoping that you will either advocate for or be mindful that religious educators need one Sunday off per month. We're going to be talking more about professional connections and Loretta and professional development, and Lynn will be talking about that a little bit further in the webinar. Also, in terms of congregational support, I mentioned already, I think twice, so important to keep that outward lens to make sure that you're not just looking at your program as a silo or as something happening separate in the congregation, always trying to put a face on what's happening in religious education, whether you're keeping up perhaps a RE greeting table that stays up in the fellowship hour or during the coffee hour or in the social hall that has visuals, descriptions of what's happening, descriptions, maybe even a list of who's currently volunteering. Having a face to the congregation is important to build that relationship. This RE covenant piece, and that really is just in the context of having a pledge or a shared understanding of what you're trying to endeavor to do. And I'm hoping it always links to the congregation's covenant as well, and always looking to a model of shared leadership. Loretta James, and if you would mention this to Anna, no, she took part in the other one, but maybe it bears repeating. This is our Liberal Religious Educators Association. This is their statement of purpose. It is an anti-racist, anti-oppression, welcoming professional organization open to liberal religious educators and those supportive of religious education. Loretta promotes the religious growth and learning of people of all ages and advocates for and supports religious educators in the field of liberal religious education. That's their website link right there, loretta.org. And so, James, even if you aren't a member yet, worth it to go and look at the website. Lynn and I will definitely encourage you to think about joining, but maybe a little bit later. And also they give radically reduced rates to brand new religious educators. Their fall conference is in Atlanta this year, and it's actually about best practices in shared ministry. It's going to be wonderful, and it's going to be October 17th through 19th in Atlanta, Georgia. These are some of those professional connections, and I'll be sending you this PowerPoint, so you don't need to write all of these down. But just again, having that link to the Loretta Association. And some of the great resources they have on that website include the Code of Professional Practices, guidelines for professional religious educators, and the Good Offices program, which Lynn will be talking about shortly. As a resource, and James, you can immediately sign on and join this group, and also, if you'd be sure, Juliana, to encourage Anna, we have Facebook pages. The one that you would immediately hear about what's happening in your area in Wisconsin or Minnesota, or like Lynn in Missouri, or I'm actually in Lexington, Kentucky, but I serve the entire region. And that's on our Mid-America You Religious Educators page. And I'd be happy to give you a thumbs up if you were to join. There's also a newer liberal educators, and that's, I'll type that in the chat box, even though, forgive me. Oh, Lynn tried to unmute and it wouldn't do it. Oh, let's put your flag up. I'm sorry, I missed that way back. There you go, Lynn.
Okay, that was a while ago.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I guess I need to put the flag up. I just want to, let me just chime in here and say that the Facebook page for Mid-America gets a lot of good sharing back and forth. It just seems really active, so it's a really easy way for people to feel connected and get involved.
And we're going to keep you unmuted, Lynn, until we hear reverb, because we're getting close to your slides, and you might have something else to offer up. There's also a newer one, and I'm going to type it into the chat box, and this is called Liberal Educators. This is a Facebook page. And it is not the official Facebook page of the Loretta. Loretta has a listserv, and you'll be seeing that link later on, which I would encourage you to get on as well. But this one is just called, in lowercase, Liberal Educators. lot of activity on that one as well. And then on there, you'll see that there is also a listserv. Amazing how you can just put out a question and the world will respond. Things that from simple as, I need to find a place for chalice tattoos. I need to find a place, even chalice chocolates, or also need an answer to, this week I have to provide a story for all ages, on this theme. Do you all have any ideas? Or do you all remember this holiday play from 10 years ago? Any kind of question works. For those of you who are new, like James, as a religious educator, there is a national program created by our national office that has marvelous continuing education opportunities for religious educators, and these are called the Renaissance program. They're called Renaissance modules, and they are a 15-hour intensive face-to-face experience, but there's also a new format of an online Renaissance module, and you would of course access it in an online learning community through your computer. And Phil Lund and I later in the year will be offering an online Renaissance module. But some of them include the administration of RE programs, curriculum planning in the local congregation, developing a philosophy of religious education, ministry with youth, teacher development. The UU history one is the one I'm mentioning that we'll be offering in an online course, UU identity, worship for all ages, and multicultural religious education. Any questions about or comments about that before we move on? So we're going to digress for a moment, and then Lynn will be chiming in. The organizational strategies. Wow. Talking about earlier of knowing your style and temperament. I'm the type of person that lives very well in chaos, and so organization is not my absolute best thing. But boy, oh boy, did I learn early as a religious educator how critically important it was. And I'm not just talking about supplies. I'm not just talking about knowing where the staplers are, which is a good thing as well, to have your RE supply closet well organized. I'm talking about having access to the resources that you need to get to your teachers or for yourself, getting organized about your time, making sure that you're not overworking, actually keeping a track of your log of how many hours you're working so you can report back. And if you are expected for attending meetings, like a board meeting, or if you're expected to submit newsletter articles, all of that, a part of your professional development is making sure that you're organized, timely, and responsible for all of those things. So any other, and you can have partners in all of that. I often would ask congregants to help me write the newsletter article about something special. Any comments or questions before we move on that one?
Nancy, what I would add to that is also tracking your finances. As you said that, you mentioned the DRE who found herself in trouble at the end of the year. You just set up your own little internal budget for the program. No matter how big or small your budget is, that's a good thing to practice to have, so you know where you are.
Wise observation. No need to add additional stress to your life when just tracking. And you can get something as easy. I'm trying to reach it quickly. I have these little composition books that I keep for different things. Here's one. Little cheapy things you can get at Staples. Well, I keep one just for whatever reason. It's really easy to just keep a track of your expenses. Of course, electronically on a computer is much better. You can tell I'm old school. Okay. So know the players. I'm saying this over and over again, but boy, oh boy, it is important to realize if you have a standing social justice committee or someone who is very active in social justice who feels like any expression of social justice needs to come through that person or that committee, know that, because my prayer is always that there will be a multi-generational awareness around social justice, but be mindful of your organizational structure and also the responsibilities that your board has and who your direct supervisor is. Also, in terms of your RE committee, truly build deep relationships there. But it's always okay if you're a new religious educator and your RE committee has been serving already for 5 years to say to them, I'm also going to be encouraging new folks to join us, just to sort of rotation in committee life is a healthy thing. It's not losing power, it's a healthy thing. It's also inviting to new families and new leaders to say there's always an open place at our table. Again, this welcoming newcomers, making sure that you're aware of what's at your greeters table. Who are the greeters? Are they aware? Could they answer an RE question or two if you don't have an RE greeter there. And then what sort of pastoral care you are expected to provide. I'm going to put James on the spot here for a second. So, James, are you serving with a minister or serving with someone who is a religious professional, or are you the only one?
No, we have a half-time reverend for our congregation.
Who's that?
Kristen Meyer.
Oh, okay, great.
Yep.
So it's really important to feel early on that you have a close working relationship with your minister in all things, but in particular, building some sort of plan for how to respond to pastoral care needs. Getting back to that confidentiality piece, A-OK to always say to people, I use a team approach, I share with our minister. It is not a good thing to say that you're going to be keeping someone's secret, no matter their age. Always have a sense of team approach and have a standing group or a standing couple of folks, maybe a couple of social workers or folks who work in community health. Know that you have some resources within your own congregation, even if it's just 60 folks, that you can call upon. Perhaps you become aware of a teen who's cutting themselves. Well, you really do need to have a sense that you all perhaps don't have the direct immediate answers, but you need to attend to it in a direct immediate way and to link them with community resources and to have some sort of pastoral care plan. New religious educators are always a little bit sometimes startled that they have this within their portfolio. It's just a humane thing. Any comments or questions?
No, not this time.
Okay, thanks. I'm a little bit too happy on that mute button. Okay, here we go. And I've already talked about worship. So important. I remember as a new religious educator, I found out about 2 weeks before that I was going to be responsible for a multi-generational worship service. I didn't have a clue. So important early in the year to find out if there's sort of any expectations that are already fixed, but also to keep an openness of heart, to always be open to the possibility of taking part in worship, and also looking to other leaders who are great storytellers, teens who play the cello, children who like to use puppets. I mean, there's lots of different things in worship. But find out how it's planned and find out who your partners are and if you're expected to work with your music director or a worship committee or your RE committee on those multi-generational worships. Now I'm going to stop myself and mute myself there. Lynn?
Okay. Okay, Loretta Good Offices Program. Religious educators have specific needs to be met if they are to function well as religious professionals and to integrate that role with a healthy personal life. Members of the congregation come to them with personal problems. It is not appropriate to take their problems to the congregation. And this has come up a couple times in what Nancy has been talking about. It can be difficult for new religious educators, especially if you came out of the congregation. I think a lot of times if you're in a smaller congregation that has that family feel, that you are in a different role now as a professional religious educator. You, like Nancy said, people will tell you things that you need to be confidential about and share with the minister. You need to be clear about that. And you are no longer a congregant. And it can be very hard for people to make that transition, that you are not taking your personal problems to the congregation. You need to have a support system outside of the congregation for your personal life issues. Let me see. Again, it can be difficult, especially because a large part of church life is being social. If you have kids in the program, they'll have friends. So it can seem kind of blurry, but you just have to be really clear that your role is different now. And I think going to the Loretta website and reviewing the Code of Professional Practice and the guidelines for professional religious educators is really important to do, and have those integrated into yourself. And if you have any questions about anything you read in there, please let me know. I can help you with that. Okay, I think next slide. The Loretta Good Offices program. Religious educators need the support of each other and at times some special support. Loretta Good Officers can help provide this support. So Good Offices is a benefit of Loretta membership. If your religious educator is not a Loretta member, they are technically allowed one consultation with a good officer should the need arise. Good officers are in place to just help people process any kind of professional concern that they might have. If they have questions about their job description, or if they have questions about their contract, or if they have conflict within the congregation or conflict with the minister, things like that, they can call the good officer and we will talk through with them, strategize, come up with what would seem like a good plan for them, how to proceed, things like that. In some cases, we might even talk to other people in the congregation with the permission of everybody involved, that sort of thing. Let's see, was there anything else I wanted to say here? The Good Offices program is organized through the Loretta chapters. Each chapter should have at least one good officer. You can find the list of the good officers on the Loretta website. You do not have to call the good officer in your chapter. If you would rather talk to somebody else, you can always do that. That's fine. We work continentally. Any questions? Okay, next slide. When to call a good officer. Before a congregation-related issue gets out of hand, i.e. in conflicts over contracts, lines of authority, unfulfilled agreements, collegial relationships, etc. When talking things over early in a conflict may resolve the situation without further steps. Our little good officer tagline is always call early and call often. Lots of times it's kind of like you have a toothache or something, you think you'll ignore it and it'll go away, and it just festers and gets worse. That can happen in congregations as well. I think we kind of forget that there's politics all over the place, and congregations can be very political. So if something seems a little out of sorts to you, it's best to just call the good officer and talk it through and just kind of be aware of what's going on in your professional life. Okay. Oh, do we want to go on to the credentialing now? Or if nobody has a question about the Good Offices program in general or anything about that specifically? Okay, the UUA's RE credentialing program. The Religious Education Credentialing Program is a 3-level program for religious education professionals intended to nurture the call to religious education as a profession, to provide a comprehensive path for professional development, and to articulate and uphold professional standards and guidelines in religious education leadership. The UUA staff person who supports the program is Jan Gartner, and you can reach her at recredentialing@uua.org. So this program has been in existence for, I guess about 8 years, maybe 10. And it's a way for religious education professionals to document their body of knowledge, and then you receive a credential from the UUA. Like it says here, it's a 3-level program. There's associate level, credentialed level, and master level. Most people come in at the credentialed level, and what you do is you create a portfolio, and there are like 6 core subjects that you have to show proficiency in, and they are things like worship, administration, right relations, anti-racism, anti-oppression work, So there's those core elements there, and then there's other elements that you can choose from. That you might pick youth and young adult ministry, or you might pick pastoral care. So there's a certain number depending which level you're going for. You have to have so many competency areas. You prepare a portfolio showing your education and work in each of those areas. You submit it to the credentialing committee, and for the credentialed level and master's level, you then go before the credentialing committee and are interviewed by them. And if you then you receive your credential from that committee. Loretta is also involved in the program in that Loretta provides mentors for everybody in the program. The mentors are trained and meet with their mentee in the program or by phone call or Skype once a month and help them keep on track with the work that they are doing. I'm credentialed religious educator, and I'm also a mentor in the program. When the program first started, it was kind of thought that it was that people had been in it and everybody would document their work, and then you would get your credential. As it's been going on for a while now, people are entering it as a way to get their education in religious education. They're entering at a much earlier stage than was originally envisioned. And going through and taking the different Renaissance modules, taking different workshops, and just using that as a way to professionalize themselves as they start off in the profession. One little practical point for those of you who are new to this: save every little certificate you get from Renaissance modules and workshops that you take so that you have something to document that you actually took the course. And you might want to write up a little reflection of it right after you take it so you have it. So I think that's it kind of in a nutshell. If there's any questions.
Yes. Anybody have a question for Lynn? And I want to welcome a new attendee, but let's first see if anybody has any questions. I also would like to share before I welcome that it took me almost 10 years to decide to join the program. I always thought I was too busy, and it has been remarkable. I have really, really loved being in this intentional learning community of religious educators who are seeking professional development within the credentialing system. And as Lynn mentioned, she is a mentor, and I'm blessed to have a mentor, and it's amazing how powerful it is to have someone help you sort of redirect your thinking and think a little bit more deeply about what you're doing. So I see that Genevieve and Holly have joined us. Hello. I'm going to unmute you. Genevieve, have you joined us? We started about almost an hour ago, but we may have sent you the wrong time. But it doesn't matter at this point. Why don't you introduce yourself, Genevieve? Are you there?
Is my headset working? Can you hear?
Yes, I can hear, definitely.
Oh, good.
It's great
I'm not getting sound through my headset, but this microphone's working, so okay. I'm sorry to be late. I thought 7:45 was the Central Time, not the Eastern Time. I didn't double check the message. Sorry about that. I'm the DRE. I'm starting my second year at Hopedale Unitarian Universalist Community in Oxford, Ohio.
Great. Thank you so much for taking part. And I'll be sending you the PowerPoint, so the sections that you weren't here for, I'll be sure to get to you. And I'm going to go ahead and mute you, Genevieve. And let's see if Holly, if we can hear who. Welcome, Holly. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, my name is Holly, and this is my first year as a DRE. I just accepted the position last week, so I'm really brand spanking new.
And where are you from and your congregation? And How many kids are hello? Are you still with us, Holly?
Yep. Yes. Yes. Can you hear
Okay.
me?
I
Um,
can. Yes. So you're serving at Prairie UU, and where is that? And how many folks are there? And I think Holly's having some audio problems, but we will not to
hey,
worry.
Josh. Josh.
Oh, okay. So I'm going to go ahead and mute her. She may not be able to hear me, but we now can hear her. And she's in Madison, with about 25 students she rides. Wonderful. So let me just tap in the box. Forgive me for the noise. I want to make sure that Holly can hear me. And also, you here. Okay, you can. You didn't even need to type it out. Thank you so much. Well, we've been talking about roles and responsibilities, important aspects of nurturing new religious educators, the Liberal Religious Educators Association. For those of you all who are fairly brand new, need to be thinking about joining. And actually, I'm just going to go back a little bit. And we were talking about that, but just look at this slide real quickly. Forgive me for flicking through there. It's important for those of you who are new, especially Holly and James, you haven't gotten to hear from yet, that this is our Religious Education Association. It's so important to have a look at their website, to look at the Code of Professional Practices, and to actually think about joining. They have reduced rates for new religious educators. And Genevieve has a question. Let me unmute Genevieve.
Nope, sorry. I must have clicked something wrong. Sorry about
That's
that.
good practice. I'm going to go ahead and mute you. For others who just joined, Holly, the red flag shows me that you have a question. So, okay, we're going to move back to where we were because we just have about 15 minutes remaining. And this will be archived and you will be able to access it to see the rest. But this is important for those of you who are fairly new, and that is let me go back. This is the Tapestry of Faith. This is our online curricula series this happened before. The toggle has a little bit of a mind of its own. This is faith development curricula and other resources. Forgive me. I have mischievous leprechauns in my computer. Okay, let me get off of there. So Tapestry of Faith involves UU identity, spiritual growth, ethical development, and faith development. Some of the examples of Tapestry of Faith materials include UU identity, and these are age graded, and I'm going to be sharing a link with you when I send you the PowerPoint, because you'll get a copy of this PowerPoint, and you'll also be able to, if you have a religious education committee, you could just look at these slides together. These are just some of the groupings. There are more. Actually, it's an amazing host of resources in Tapestry of Faith. And I'm wondering, let's see if anybody has any questions. So again, those 4 strands that are in every tapestry, all of the materials. There is an ethical element, faith development, spiritual identity, and UU history and tradition. But there are sections of resources that are specifically tailored. So these are the resources that if you're looking at perhaps spending a year, even though folks usually don't do just one solid strand for a year, it just depends on how you organize your program, but you could think about it. If you wanted to explore UU identity, this particular slide would show you an example if you wanted to do age-graded cohorts, all looking at UU identity, all using Tapestry resources. These would be examples of that, going up the adult age. Any questions or comments before we move forward? Yes, Juliana, I'm going to unmute you. And Juliana, would you say again for our new attendees who you are and where you're from?
I'm Juliana Newman from the UU Fellowship of Door County, Wisconsin. And I am assisting a new DRE. We've created a new position, and we have a very small group of children. And that leads me to my question. we're really equipped only to have at this time have 2 classes because attendance is low. And we sometimes have in the younger groups children from the age of 3 up to sometimes age 8 with more of them. And so we're kind of looking at kindergarten level materials and trying to adapt them to use with this broader age group. If you have any suggestions about other ways to address that, I would be happy to hear about it.
Well, this is the perfect conversation to have in this evening because of the folks who are on, except for Lynn. She serves a larger congregation. But I know Genevieve's been serving for a couple of years already. This is the beginning, I think, of your second year, Genevieve. But I believe you also have multi-age groups. But I would recommend, and I'll be happy, there is a slide looking at some of the multi-age opportunities. But it's worth it, Juliana, to go to the Church for the Larger Fellowship, clf.org. And
yes.
They have automatically about 6 sessions that are specifically for multi-age groups, even if it's like a 3-year-old to 8-year-old. And it also, if you go to the UUA.org website and just type in, RE resources, multi-age RE resources, you'll see some more. But anybody else have any thoughts or suggestions for Juliana?
You might also want to look at an older curriculum. It's called We Believe, and I think it's sold through the UUA bookstore. And it was written several years ago specifically for kind of the one-room schoolhouse model. So there is that. And there's also a place called UU Cards, which is independent curriculum writers. There might be something on there that you could find. That would be useful.
And I do have that on my PowerPoint slides. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I missed, she mentioned something called We Believe, and then one more after that, and I didn't catch the name of it.
UU Cards.
UU Cards. Oh, I see. Okay.
It's a place where independent curriculum writers have all their materials up there.
And
wonderful.
And Juliana, many of them have authored thinking about those smaller congregations and multi-age. But the We Believe resource that Lynn mentioned is a great resource as well. But I'm going to back us up a little bit. And we're going to keep looking at some of the Tapestry resources. And I'm biased. I love Tapestry. And so if you have other resources, more power to you. A lot of people go to, not-for-profits. They do Google searches. They go to Amazon. If there is a progressive company that's looking at peace and justice in new and wonderful ways, that's the beauty about being a Unitarian Universalist religious educator. I just have to encourage you to look at the whole resource before you roll it out or purchase it. And then also to be sure to get other folks in your committee or your community to get on board if you're using something altogether different. But again, in my subjective bias, I love the tapestry of resources. So if you're looking at spiritual development, on this creating home for a K1, where you actually walk a labyrinth. But if you were to help create a labyrinth, I think that could be a multi-age activity. And there's lots of different ways to do that. It doesn't have to be putting stone down. You can actually put out markers. I know, Genevieve, you have a gorgeous grounds in your community up in Hopedale in Oxford, Ohio. I'm not sure if you've ever done anything like that out in your area. I don't know if you can unmute yourself. Let me go ahead and unmute you there for a second. So, Genevieve, do you all do anything out and about using the grounds or do anything like walking a labyrinth with the young ones?
We haven't set up a labyrinth outside yet. We did creating home last year with that age group, and just had a labyrinth on a tablecloth.
Well, maybe she'll come back to us.
But I'm talking. Hello? 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 It looks like my mic is working, is it not?
I can hear you.
Okay. We haven't done much with our grounds. We do have a trail system out there. That's fun. Oh, and it looks like
Youth?
Nancy's having problems.
And there you go. Ooh. Okay,
Hello.
Are you still there with us, Genevieve?
I'm still here. Can people hear
Okay,
me?
great.
Okay.
Yes, we can hear you. You were saying about. Mhm.
Yeah, we just had an indoor temporary labyrinth last year. Haven't done much with our grounds, although we hope to in future years. And I just wanted to throw out one little bit for this year. Our younger class is really kind of two distinct age groups. And the idea one of our teachers had was to do the opening ceremony together and then kind of split off and do the crafts and activities with the 4-year-olds and then separately with the 7-year-olds and then come back together. Now I can't hear.
What?